Hi guys, this is Fiona from IELTS with Fiona and the Members Academy. And in this week's new lesson on the blog, we're looking at grammar specifically for IELTS. So I've taken a grammar point that you've probably practiced before, but it may be that you're practicing with examples that you will never use. And I talk about this in my blog today. So the quantifiers I've chosen to focus on are few, a few, little, and a little. I did some research into these quantifiers and found that the advice is either a little bit misleading about how they're used, or they give quite unnatural examples. So examples you probably wouldn't use. Sometimes they give examples that just fit the rules, but you would never say it. So, for example, with these quantifiers, you might find examples like I put a little sugar in my coffee to practice the word little or a little. Would you like a little butter on your bread? Those kind of useless examples you'll never use. And I think it's really important that you're always using examples that would be considered high level. And that's what I go into in this lesson. So the other thing about some of the advice was the way the examples often sound unnatural. I'll give you examples of those later on. And also in this lesson, we're looking at how to use these quantifiers in fixed expressions, for example, in your writing and speaking. And we also look at how they're tested in the reading and listening tests. So you probably already know the difference between few and little is about countable and uncountable nouns. So few is countable and little is uncountable. So you might see examples like I have few friends. So yes, in some circumstances you might say I have few friends, but it's not as common as I don't have many friends. So few would be with friends and little with uncountable things like sugar and money. So again, the examples they gave, I have little money. You probably say I don't have much money. It depends on the context. So the difference between few and a few, this is another area which is a little bit misleading when you read the grammar explanations. So the grammar explanations often say that a few is positive, while few is negative. So they say, if you say, I have a few friends, that's positive, whereas few friends is negative. But actually, I have a few problems is negative. So the words negative and positive aren't very helpful. So the use of a few is positive in terms of quantity. So when you say I have a few friends, it's a small but significant amount. So you can also have a few problems. And then the negative is a lack of. It doesn't mean negative as in sad. You could have few problems, meaning you don't have many problems. So you can see the confusion there. So maybe a better way of thinking about it is adds some kind of idea that there are some, even if there are not many. So a few people attended the meeting suggests that there were enough people to have the meeting. But if you say few people attended the meeting, it suggests disappointment about low attendance, a kind of lack or scarcity, not enough. And the same is true of little. Little means a lack of. I have little money suggests financial difficulty. You might say it differently. You might say, I don't have much money. But if you say a little, it suggests you have a small but useful amount. There is some money, even if there's not much money. So that's the main difference between the idea that there's enough, there's some, whereas without the it's a lack of and not enough. But remember, a lack of problems is positive, so you have to be careful there. So on the blog, I go through very common IELTS topics such as education. Let's start with that. And I give you two examples, one with a few and one with few. So for example, a few education experts believe that incorporating more games into lesson time could improve student engagement. So you can see the language there is formal and useful for writing task 2. So we said a few experts believe, and the opposite, few students today read books outside of their required coursework. So you can see there's a negative implication. Few students, not many students read books. So few there meaning not many. Let's do one more. There's the environment. A few governments have introduced policies to promote renewable energy sources. That's an idea that a few governments are taking action. But few countries have taken strong enough action to reduce carbon emissions. So few countries meaning not enough. And as you read through the examples there, I hope it will give you a better feeling for when you can use a few and few. The same goes for little and a little. So if we look at education again as an example, with a little more investment in training, the skills gap in many industries could be reduced. So there's an idea that if you just put a little more money, a little investment, then we can reduce the skills gap. Then, if we look at little, there is little motivation among students to pursue careers in the arts due to limited job prospects. There is little motivation, meaning not much motivation. Let's take another example, the environment again. Governments could make a little progress in reducing plastic waste by encouraging the use of biodegradable materials. They could make a little progress, meaning they could do something, but negative idea, little effort has been made to combat deforestation in certain parts of the world. Little effort, not enough effort. And when I did this research, especially into little, I found these fixed expressions that I think you can use a lot. So there is little motivation, meaning nobody really wants to do it. Little effort has been made, meaning nobody has really put much effort into this. Little regulation exists to control the spread of misinformation. Little is known about the long-term effects of certain diets on health. Little is known. Little support. Little has been done. They're really useful expressions that you could apply to any context. So you can see now how these examples are going to be much more useful than the examples of I take little sugar in my tea. And there's a lot of practice there for you on the blog as well. When it comes to reading and listening, I've put 3 examples where you can see these, especially in the reading test. The first one is called The Story of Silk, and it's a true, false, not given question. And the text says, few merchants travelled the entire route. Few meaning not many. And the question says, most tradesmen only went along certain sections of the Silk Road. So few, meaning not many, travelled the entire route, which means that most only went along certain sections of the route. So the answer is true. There's another one about Easter Island, and there's another one about the big cats. Let's do this one. The big cats, for example, the lynx. In the text, it says the lynx presents little risk to sheep and livestock, meaning not much risk. And the gap fill question says the lynx presents only a minimal threat to, and the answer is livestock. So little risk translates to minimal threat. So you can see in those examples how they often use little and few in the reading. Now in the listening, I've got 3 videos for you here, and you can listen to the exact way that they use little and few in the listening test. The first one is about dolphin conservation, and there's a speaker called Alice, and she says oil exploration causes problems to dolphins because of, and there are 3 options: noise, oil leaks or pollution, and movement of ships. And when she speaks, she says there's been very little shipping, meaning not much shipping, not many ships. So you can cross that one out. And she said there'll be little pollution from oil. So not oil pollution. You can cross that one out. But then she says it creates a lot of underwater noise. And that is the correct answer. But really, you could get that answer by knowing the words little shipping and little pollution. And there are 2 more examples with their videos there, so you can test yourself. Finally, I look at some of the common mistakes with little and few. So people tend to use few wrongly when they should write a few, especially in task 2 essays. There are a few positive reasons. There are a few disadvantages. Then I look at why you might use some. So we talked about how the examples are sometimes unnatural with a little and a few. In most cases, some is fine. There is some evidence to suggest that drinking coffee can benefit your health. You could say a little evidence, but in that case, a little is a little informal. So it's better to say there is some evidence. It's collocation as well. Some studies suggest that coffee can benefit your health. Again, some is fine there. You could say a few studies, but a few there is a little bit casual, informal. So sometimes it's better to use some evidence and some studies. You'll notice that from your reading. On the other hand, a little can be considered too formal. So people often say a bit of instead. For example, I did a bit of research, you'd say in speaking. You might say I did a little research, that's okay, but also I did a bit of research. In the examples, the things that I found much too formal were with little. So I saw this example, we have very little time. You'd find that maybe in a James Bond movie, but in speaking, you'd say, we haven't got much time, or we don't have much time. I speak little French. it said in the example, like, I speak little French. I don't speak much French would be more natural. And the one we mentioned earlier, I have few friends, may be better to say, I don't have many friends. It just sounds a lot more natural. You can also emphasize few and little. Very few people smoke these days. Very few people smoke in the UK. It's just too expensive. So the same meaning is not many people, but very few gives it more emphasis. Very little progress has been made. Again, really emphasizes that not much progress has been made. And you can be specific in the field of medicine, for example. A few is often better in certain contexts where you want to be more specific about numbers. So some is often too general. So the doctor might tell you to rest for a few days. A few days meaning 3 or 4. If the doctor said rest for some days, it would be wrong. Some days could be what? 30 days? 40 days? I don't know. So if you say a few days, then people tend to know it's about 3 or 4 days. Finally, we've talked about using little and few for task 2 examples, but I've got a list of 10 really nice examples you can use for general training letters. I've given the alternative not many if I think it sounds better. So, for example, you're writing to a friend about a new job. You could say, I've only been working here for a few weeks, but I've already learned a little about the industry. Giving advice to a cousin about moving to your city. There are a few great neighborhoods to live in, but there's not much parking available in the city centre. Now, I put not much parking. I think it's better than there's little parking for the reasons that we've described in the rest of the blog and in this podcast. So that is it for this grammar point. I hope I've been able to draw your awareness to some of the things you need to think about when you're preparing your grammar specifically for the IELTS test. Just be really careful about the examples that you're spending time learning. I try to make all my examples relevant to the IELTS test. And I hope you can see from this lesson how you can quickly improve by changing the examples that you're learning. So instead of I put a little sugar in my coffee, you're learning things like a little daily exercise can have a significant impact. Those are much better examples, and it's a quick way, really quick way to level up your writing. So if you have any questions about that, or if anything remains unclear, please get in touch, whichever way is easier for you, on the podcast or on any of my social media platforms, or leave a comment on the website. Remember, there are loads of free lessons there, and there's a new grammar section. So you can go to that grammar section and find a quick review of this few, a few, little, and a little. Thanks for listening. Chat soon. Bye-bye.